After a terrible collapse last week at TCU, the Red Raiders stay on the road. This time they head north to face off against a top 12 team in the country and the number 11 Iowa State Cyclones. In today's video, we'll give you the latest injury updates, including that of the starting quarterback, Behren Morton, odds, and my game prediction. Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast. I think the players have moved past this game, right, in terms of the TCU game, but us fans, we're still trying to get over it a little bit, at least speaking for myself, I am, after that 17-point collapse in Fort Worth. And there's a lot of animosity on social media, whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter. We've got people saying, Pink Raiders this, Pink Raiders that, which is absolutely crazy because I don't think you're a Pink Raider if you actually care about Texas Tech. But I digress. Let's try and move on, just like the coaching staff and the players have, and focus on Iowa State, and that's what we're going to do in today's video. So before we get into the preview, you know what to do at this point if you're a member of the channel. Let me know your score prediction for Texas Tech at number 11 Iowa State down on the pinned comment below. I think I know where a lot of you guys are going to go. I have a gut feeling, and I might be going there right with you, but let me know your score prediction. Don't want to assume anything. Just have a gut feeling on where y'all are headed on this one. Let me know down on the pinned comment below. All right, let's lay some groundwork real quick for Texas Tech heading into November, right? In the month of November, the Red Raiders under Joey McGuire are a combined 6-2 in the month in his first two seasons as the Texas Tech head coach. Now, I mentioned that Iowa State is a top 12 team in the country, which means, hey, they're ranked, right? Well, the Red Raiders are 3-6 against ranked opponents under Joey McGuire, which includes a 1-5 mark in road games against said top 25 teams. This game will take place at Jack Trice Stadium, home of the Bridges, if you know, you know, up in Ames, Iowa, with a mid-afternoon kickoff up there in Iowa. The history between Texas Tech and Iowa State, this will be the 22nd all-time meeting between the Red Raiders and the Cyclones, as the Red Raiders are 13-8 after they've won each of the last two meetings. You might remember that cold as hell game up there in Ames where I think the temperature was below 20, closer to 0 than 20, if I do remember correctly. Anyway, Texas Tech will be making back-to-back trips to Ames for the first time in the series, as the Red Raiders are 5-5 all-time as the road team in this matchup. But before we get into the injury updates, another note in this one, Texas Tech is 2-1 all-time in road games at Iowa State during the month of November. Maybe that makes you feel better. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm just the messenger here, okay? So let's jump into the injury update for Texas Tech. Bryce Ramirez will miss this game due to the rod being taken out from that just nasty, gruesome injury he had at NC State a couple years ago. Joey McGuire did say that he is in good spirits, and they hope it is not a season-ending injury for Bryce Ramirez, but he is in good spirits and should be good to go in terms of just normal activity, which is by far the most important thing. When I say normal activity, I just mean life, right? Like, that's the most important thing when it comes to Bryce Ramirez. I'm glad he's in good spirits and everything is headed in the right direction with that scary leg injury he had a couple years ago. Javion Wilcox is yet to appear in a game this year. He is ruled out again with a knee injury. The questionable tags are, well, it's substantial for the Red Raiders in this one, so bear with me as we run through it. We've got offensive guard Davion Carter with a knee injury, Devin Cromwell with a shoulder injury, Mo Horn with a shoulder injury, Chapman Lewis with a shoulder injury, and then Braylon Lux with the shoulder injury. 3 of your starting 5 DBs have shoulder injuries or are questionable. Now, we'll say what Joey McGuire had to say about this questionable tag here in just a second, but Dre McCray has a head injury. So does Dalton Merriman, your starting left tackle. Behren Morton with the shoulder injury. Marcus Ramon Edwards with a head injury. And then Dylan Shaw with a hand injury. Joey McGuire, I don't know exactly the way a lot of people are going to take this, but he did say that a lot of these questionable tags do have a good chance to play on Saturday. What does a good chance look like? I don't know. But that's obviously good for Texas Tech going into a top 12 matchup. Now, the biggest one on that list by far is Behren Morton, right? And now there's no structural damage. That was one of the big things that Joey McGuire brought up in his Iowa State preview presser, There is no structural damage. It looks like it might just be a pain tolerance thing, but he was very sore, was Behren Morton, after going through those MRIs to confirm there was no structural damage. Who will be the starting quarterback against Iowa State? He said it's kind of TBD right now. If it's not Behren Morton, it will be Will Hammond, though. That is what Joey McGuire said. It feels like we're headed to the first start for a true freshman in Will Hammond, right? That's kind of what it feels like. You don't want to rush Behren Morton back. Maybe I'm being a little bit premature there. Nothing is set in stone by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of get that feeling, okay? But you're going to have Davion Carter. You're going to need Dalton Merriman. I mean, Ty Buchanan wasn't awful at left tackle in that matchup against TCU, but Dalton Merriman has been a stalwart since he has been named the starting left tackle for the Red Raiders on that offensive line. And obviously it would be good to have Mo Horn, Chapman Lewis, and then Braylon Lux play as well in the secondary for the Red Raiders. Now, when it comes to the must-watch matchup in this one, actually, before I get into that, Rocco Becht is a guy you're going to need to know in this one. He's a starting quarterback for Iowa State, so players you need to know for the Cyclones. Rocco Becht leads the way for them as the starting quarterback. He has 11 touchdowns and 5 interceptions on the year, just over 1,700 yards, about a 60% completion percentage, just over 61% to be exact. Now, they have a three-headed monster in the backfield to the Cyclones with 3 guys with over 300 yards rushing, Hanson, Jackson, and Sama. So it's all interesting there because each of them have 60-plus carries, with Sama right there at 60. Now, when it comes to the receiving group for Iowa State, you've got Noel and Higgins. Those are the guys you need to know. Each of them have over 550 yards receiving, north of 35 catches on the air, and each have at least 3 touchdowns, with Higgins actually having 6. Now, when it comes to the defense for Iowa State, and we'll talk about them in the must-watch matchup here in just a second, they don't get after the quarterback a whole ton. They average about a sack per game, just barely north of it, with 9 on the season. What they're really good at is creating turnovers in their secondary. 12 picks on the year so far. Yes, you heard that right. 12 interceptions so far for the Iowa State Cyclones on the season. They have 17 pass deflections, and they create turnovers left and right with 4 forced fumbles as well on the year. Now, the must-watch matchup for this one, in my opinion, is the Texas Tech offense versus the Iowa State defense. So again, Texas Tech offense versus the Iowa State defense, and I think Dalton Merriman is huge in this game, right? Because if you do potentially have a true freshman quarterback starting on the road, you're going to want that guy that, listen, when we were critical of the offensive line last year, it was deserved. But this bunch has actually been decent this year, okay? Have they been good? That might be too strong of a word, but they've definitely been at least average this year. Once they've got that collective group together, and really they came together after Vinny Scurry got hurt. And Dalton Merriman has been your best offensive lineman this year, outside of maybe Sheridan Wilson at the center spot. Now, Texas Tech has the highest scoring offense in the Big 12. The Kitley haters hate hearing that. And by the way, I'm impartial on the Kitley stuff. I just want to say that. But in the Big 12, in terms of the highest scoring offenses, that's where the Red Raiders are top of the charts, averaging 38.1 points per game. Iowa State has the best scoring defense in the Big 12 at 14.4 points per game allowed. Now, the one area that Iowa State really isn't that good, and you could argue this is because, well, they've had games where it's so out of hand, the teams just start doing this just to run out the clock. That's run the football. You can run the football in Iowa State, though. They have the 3rd worst run defense in the Big 12, allowing 170.1 rushing yards per game so far this season. For reference, Texas Tech averages 168.9 rushing yards per game this year. And let's face it, we know who leads the way in that, and it's Taj Brooks. And the most interesting part about Taj Brooks, as I put over on Twitter, and I look at my phone real quick to make sure this stat is correct, Texas Tech star running back Taj Brooks is now just 158 rushing yards away from becoming the program's all-time leading rusher. He is currently on pace to break that mark against Colorado at home, not this week, but next week, as he is averaging about 133 rushing yards per game. So that's going to be interesting to follow, because theoretically, if you look at the stats, he could beat it at Iowa State. I think it's far more likely that he breaks the all-time rushing record for the Texas Tech football program on Saturday, hopefully night. Fingers crossed, as that is a flex 6-day out game against the Colorado Buffaloes, who are in the top 25 now. Texas Tech at number 11 Iowa State. What are the odds? Not great, Bob. They're not great. This line actually opened at 12.5. It quickly rose to about 15. It's averaged out at 14.5 to Iowa State. So a 2-possession ball game. The total over-under is set at 55.5 on this one. I can't in good faith pick the Red Raiders in this one. I can't. I mean, this Iowa State team is really good. They have dominated for long stretches. They've had one really hiccup, and they still won that game, and that was against UCF at home. I think Iowa State, Matt Campbell's crew, is significantly better than the Red Raiders right now, and I think Iowa State wins this game 37-22 and barely covers that 14.5-point spread. All right, let me know what your score prediction is for this one as Texas Tech heads up to Ames to play against the number 11 Iowa State Cyclones, set for mid-afternoon up there in the land of bridges. Again, if you know, you know. I'm RC Maxfield, reminding you, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell, because listen, there's not just football content here on the channel, people. We've got basketball coming up soon. And in fact, the next video here on the channel will be a Texas Tech men's basketball season preview. Only 7 days away at the time of this recording on Tuesday, October 29th. It's going to be a hell of a year for Grant McCaslin's team out in the 806. But I'm RC Maxfield. We'll catch you next time here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.